Hello there, it's Jan here at JB Crafts. Thank you for joining me on the channel today. It's lovely to have your company. And I'm going to do a card design today, but something I haven't done on the channel before, and that is using fabric on my card today as the background. So this part is fabric here, and the little pleated area is fabric, and I'm going to show you how I've done this. It's using a product again that I've had in my stash a very long time, but I know you can buy similar items out on the market today. And all I've done is I've made the background and covered it with the frame, and then because we were using fabric, I've gone for a little sort of sewing theme on this one today. So, you know, relatively simple components, bit of die cutting. These are all die cut, and I'll show you the set that I've used. I've put some thread around the bobbin just to make it look a little bit more authentic, and again just a few gems dotted about to decorate. Kept it very simple on the inside, and I've just got this is actually a stamp that's just got a row of little stitches on, which I thought were perfect to go with that sewing theme. So yeah, let me show you how I've put this one together, and I wanted to focus on this fabric element in the background. So it's a simple background on this one. I've got a shop bought card which is sold as a 6x6 design. Well, the 6x6 envelope. So my card is just, you can see it's just a fraction under the 6 inches both ways, and that will allow it to go in a 6x6 envelope. Now if you don't have these, you could create your own sort of square frame. I just thought I've got loads of these to use up, and I'm working on using the stash. I always say that's what the channel's all about. Delve in there. We've all got hordes of stuff, or most of us have. Get in there and use up the stash. And then I've got a simple matte layer to go in the background, just to bring out that pink. Apologies for the pink again. I know I'm getting a bit obsessed with the pink at the minute, but my piece of fabric was pink, so that's where it came from. So I've just gone down a little bit to create a matte layer, and this one is 5 1/4 inches square. So the card itself is just over 5 3/4. I wanted a nice cream border around the edge, and we can actually get this one stuck down so that that can be drying, because we're going to work on top of this with the rest of the imagery. So I'm just going to use a little bit of my Collal all-purpose, which is getting very low. I've still not done my I need to do an adhesive border. I'm running low on 1 or 2 of the everyday glues that I use. Okay, so we're just going to pop this one straight onto the card blank, and I'm making it a side fold, so it's like a book fold card, and then just get that wriggled into place, and then I'm going to leave that to dry while we work on the embellishments and the fabric. So pop that over to one side for a second, and I'm going to bring in the piece of fabric. So this is a slightly different pattern, and again, I've had these in my stash for such a long time. I really have. The things that came up when I first started working for Crafters Companion, when I was demonstrating for them, probably before I even went on the TV channel. And again, I'm sort of sorting through things slowly and digging stuff out, and this is what I wanted to work with. So yeah, these were from the same pack. They were a pack of little what they call fat squares, and they were 5 inches square. I've just trimmed this one down slightly to make I wanted it to fit behind the frame here, so I've trimmed it down to 4 1/2 inches. I've still got the 5-inch width, and what we're going to do is pleat it like this. Now, in order for it to behave better, I've used a fabric stiffener, and again, this was in the box with the fabric, and I don't think it's made any longer, because this was the soft craft element of Crafters Companion, the threaders, and I haven't seen this for a very long time. So I got it out and had a look, and it does still work, but I know you can buy this kind of thing in if you're here in the UK, such as probably Hobbycraft would sell something like this. It is just a fabric stabilizer, so it's almost like starch, and all you do is spray it on. So I had my piece of fabric, and I've done this in advance because I needed it to dry. Had my piece of fabric on some tissue, and I've literally just sprayed it all over the front of the fabric. I only did the one side, and then you leave it to dry. Now it took a good 30 minutes or so, and I'm in my conservatory, which at this time of year is very warm, but you can always give it a little blast with your heat tool, and what it does is it makes it a lot more rigid, and it behaves like a piece of paper instead of fabric. So at that point you can score and fold it, you could die cut it, and you should get a nice crisp edge on it. Now if I was die cutting with my Gemini machine, I would add my metal shim in to give it something to bite into because it's fabric. But when it gets to this stage, you can hear, you know, and it's not floppy like a piece of fabric at all. It is much more sort of rigid. So we're going to work with this first, and what I want to do is create this little panel here, and I've come about halfway across the internal part of the frame that I've created, and we're just going to create some lines, and I'm not even bothered about, you could score this if you want, but I'm not even bothered. I'm going to do this freehand, and the first thing that I'm going to do is fold in to get rid of that raw edge. Now I am going to bring my bolt folder in here just like I would with paper, and just seal that crease in there. And what that's done there is given me a really nice neat edge instead of anything that may fray. This is the edge that's going to be in the center of the card. And then all I'm going to do is create some pleats on here. So I want the folds to come this way. So all I'm going to do is literally push this where I want it to go, and then overlap so that we've got a little tiny pleat in there. Now I'm not worried if the pattern doesn't line up. I'm not that precious about this one. The other one had leaves on, so I didn't notice that. But yeah, I've got about 1/4 of an inch maybe that I've overlapped and just made a new fold line that's landed on the top of that first one. So all I'm doing is like accordion folding. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to take another section and I'm going to put that little tiny nip in it, and then decide where I want it to land and just overlap. Now that one actually I've got a little bit more of it lined up there, and again just use the bone folder just like you would with a piece of card. Okay, it's gone a little bit wobbly at the top, but that bit's going to be under the frame, so I'm not too worried about that. And then I'm just going to keep going on that same basis. So I'm pushing it forwards and I'm overlapping it to get that series of folds. And again, I'm not overly worried if they're not the same distance. If that bothers you, you could actually use a scoreboard to get this sort of a little bit more straight. But you can see now that we're getting these little tucks in here, little pleats in here. And I'm just going to keep going all the way across the fabric until we've got something that looks about the right size to fit under my frame. So again, just tucking it over and giving it a burnish with the bone folder, and I've probably got room to do one last one there, I think. Now then, let's check with the frame and see how we're doing. So this has been done with a couple of my stitched square dies, and I've cut it twice and stuck them together with the all-purpose glue so that we've got a really nice hard frame there. And this is going to come across here, and we want it to land sort of in the middle. Yes, I think that's probably okay there. Do we want to squeeze another one in? Let's have a look and see. If I bring another one in, I think it's going to make it a little bit short. I need to leave some to stick to the side of the frame. So once you're happy with it, then what I'm going to do is use my red line tape just to help secure it on the back. So I'm going to turn it over, and I'm just going to pop a piece of tape from here just across the back to hold it all and hold those pleats in place while we work with it. And again, at the bottom, we're going to do the same. Apologies if you guys can hear. I think I've got some building work. I think someone's having their drive done out back behind us on the estate, and they were very noisy yesterday, and I can hear them. They started already, despite it only being 8:20 in the morning. They're up and out. So yeah, if you can hear any sort of background noise, any machinery, anything like that, the wagon keeps beeping occasionally. I do apologise if that's in the background. So yeah, all that's done is seal it in place now so that I've got a piece to work with, and then we're going to stick this behind the frame. And I want it to come about halfway across. So what I'm going to do is just trim this edge. I'm just going to trim a fraction off here. You can see how well it just cuts through with that sort of stiffener element in. So we'll just get rid of that bit. I don't need that little bit because I don't want it to pop out of this side of the frame when we stick it down. Okay, and then the other half, this is the other half of the piece I used on the first card here. You can see in the background, this is fabric as well. Now again, you know, if you don't have fabric, you can do paper pleating with paper, and that's something that I might add to the channel on a future video. So yeah, anything that I'm doing here with the fabric, this could be a piece of pattern paper, this could be a piece of pattern paper that you've done the pleating on, but we're actually going to put this one to create the other half of the background there. So that's going to be the frame that we're going to work with. So what we need to do then is we need to start adhering this to the frame. So I'm going to pop this one in first, and I'm going to flick over to my acrylic glue for this one. Get a better finish, and it does dry quite quickly. So let's move that one out of the way. And what I want to do is just run some across the top here and across the bottom. And I've still got my folded edge at this side, and then I'm going to take some up this edge, and we're going to secure this behind the frame. So bearing in mind I want it to come roughly halfway across, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to eyeball whereabouts that halfway mark is, and I'm going to get that one on here. Okay, just give it a good press. Just scoot it up a little bit so that it's more central on the back for keeping it down. Give that glue a press, and the acrylic glue works absolutely fine. Because this behaves more like paper now, I found the acrylic glue worked absolutely fine on here. And then we're going to do the same and adhere this piece. Now mine has got a little bit of orientation, so I need to make sure it's the right way up, but this one I'm going to put the glue all the way around the edge, so top and bottom to go to the frame, this side to go onto the frame, and then I'm also going to do the other side, which will stick to the back of the piece of pink fabric. So I'm keeping it the right way, so that's the top, and I'm going to put this one behind here so that it overlaps both the frame and that pink section there, and we've got that pressed in as well. So that's going to give me that design in the middle there, which I'm quite happy with. So that glue dries pretty quickly, which is why I've used the acrylic glue. Just give that one a press down, and that's going to be my background today with the frame on. Now I'm going to add some foam tape. Just grab that out of my box here. Because I've got a little bit of bulk, and because I want the frame raising, I'm going to add some foam tape over the background. My roll's getting down. See what I mean about putting an order in? This was about this big when I started. Getting a bit jittery now. So yeah, I'm going to put this over the sides here like so. Now then, let me just have a think. Yeah. And then I'm going to go down this side, because this one's relatively flat, because we kept that piece of fabric flat on that side. And then all I'm going to do is just go up to the pleated bit here. So I'm just going to put some here and in this gap like so. Okay, so the bulk of the fabric here is not quite the same depth as the tape, but it's going to allow this. I don't want to make it too uneven, so this is stable enough as it is, and the bulk of the fabric behind here is holding that up to a certain extent. And then I've got my little sentiment here I've created with a border die. That's not a border die, Jan, it's a book plate die or a frame. So I've cut out my sentiment here, and then I've added some gold eyelets in because I wanted that little bit of touch of gold on the scissors, and I've threaded some twine through here. So I've done that ready. I've done exactly the same, and this is going to go across the frame before we adhere it down. So what I want to do is just lift some of the, oh my apologies, just bear with me, that's my doorbell. Okay, sorry about that. Doorbell went off. I went to the door, answered the door, and there's nobody there. I thought, great. Chap's at the other side of the fence. He says, oh, I'm sorry, love. He says, I've knocked on the wrong door. So yeah, all the way through the other side of the house, and yeah, didn't even need to go. Anyway, what I was going to do was take off a little bit of the tape so that I can secure the thread across the back here. So I'm going to lift up, this is the bottom part, and just lift the backer off here for a second. Okay, and I'm just going to pop it on top. Let me use my ink pad because I don't want that to stick to the table, and then position where we want this, and I'm going to pop this all the way across. So I want it slightly off center, and we're going to go, I think, just want a little gap here at this side. I'm going to get it to go about there, I think. So I'm going to wrap this around and stick it to that tape behind so that we've got an anchor. And then I want to make sure that it's running straight. So I'm going to use the dots, I think, on my frame here, which will come in handy. And just get that running straight. So let me just have a look where we're at. We're on there, I think, about there. Yeah, and then just tack that down to the foam tape at the back to make sure it's secure. And then we can pop this onto our card now. So if I remove the rest of the tape here, or should I say the liner off the tape, and then we can actually get this one stuck to our card base now. So that should be nice and dry. We'll bring that back in. I'm going to take off those sort of excess, we don't need all that length on the back of the twine there, so I'm just going to chop some of that off. And then what we're going to do is pop this one, make sure my card opens the right way. You could do this way as well, but I've actually got mine on a book fold. And then we're going to position that one, and just excuse my, in fact, let me stand it up because I just need to be able to see all the way around it so that we've got the same border all the way around. I'm happy with that, and then give that a nice press down in place. And then I have actually got a little bit of foam on the back of the tag there, just running either side of the twine so that we can secure this onto the front as well. So flip that back over now, make sure that it's straight, and we can pop that in place so you can see it all coming together. So the rest of it now is just embellishments, and I've actually got, this one was from an old die. I've got a little set of doily dies again that I've had quite a while, so I've cut this out in the cream cardstock, little scrap of the cream, and edged it with a bit of ink. And then I've used an old set of dies, again, had these in my stash for ages. This is when I very first started working for Crafters Companion. They brought out a sewing, soft crafts collection called So Lovely, and I actually went through my stash and pulled these out, and this one, it's got the most gorgeous, these are slightly larger than the dies, but it just creates this most gorgeous pair of scissors, and it reminds me of the ones that I often use in my my photo shots for the videos, but they're very kind of silver. These ones have got silver at the bottom with the gold at the top, but it just reminded me of those, and I thought, yeah, we'll have a pair of those on there. So I've cut those in some matte gold cardstock, and again I've cut a spare bit out of the cream and doubled it up. I always do this with my embellishments. And then also on this one we've got the little buttons, and these are just adorable. So again, I've cut a couple of those, little bit of scrap pattern paper, and I've actually drawn the crosses on the front with a pen rather than using thread. They were a little bit tiny, a bit delicate. So we've got a couple of buttons to play with. And then the other one had the cotton bobbin on. So I've die cut the bobbin out of some neutral cardstock, given it a little bit of an ink in, and then I've just wrapped some pink twine around it and secured it on the back with some tape. And I just thought that gives it a little bit more authenticity than just the blank bobbin. So if you've got anything like this in your stash, I know other companies do the soft craft collections as well, so it may be a different company. And those are what we're going to use to embellish with. So first of all, we're going to pop this one down, and I did want that to tuck behind there a little bit. So what I'm going to do, forgotten to do, in fact, will that, no, I don't want to disturb that now. So all I'm going to do is just chop a little section off the bottom so that we can line it up. I did plan to have that underneath, but now it will actually tuck underneath there. And again, we're going to continue with that acrylic glue this time. It just behaves like paper. Once you've got that spray stiffener, that starch on the fabric, it literally behaves like paper. So this one's just going to go as a backdrop for the little trio of embellishments. So I'm going to pop the scissors so that they're just popping onto the sentiment, and then I've got my little cotton bobbin there. So what I'm going to do is pop acrylic glue. It's got a bit of tape underneath just to hold the twine in place, but I'm going to pop over the top of the twine, put a little bit at the top and bottom, but mainly that twine area so that that actually fits against it. And we're going to grab that, and I want this to just overlap a tad on the bottom of there, like so. And then I'm going to grab my other tweezers just while we're working and just hold that one in place for a second while, they only just fit across there, don't they? That'll do, just to hold it in place. And then again, I'm going to pop some glue behind the scissors here, the same basis, just some little dabs of that acrylic glue. I found that that worked absolutely fine on the top of the fabric. Just make sure it's got a bit on all of the design, and then I'm going to tap off some of that with my finger so that I don't get any of that splodging out onto the card itself. And then we're going to pop this one at an angle, and I wanted the tip to just touch in between the sentiment there, so we're going to go sort of about that angle. And again, I've got a little bit of wax paper here which we can use to give that a good press, and it will catch any glue that pops out. So that's my scissors in place. And then the last thing was add the little tiny buttons. So again, we're going to put some on the back of here. I just need it on, well, we've got it on the back. And then I want to put these just across the corner. So the large one, the little tiny one is just so cute. It's adorable. Again, a bit on the back of there. And put that one to match. So we've got that sort of cluster bringing them together. So I've got a little bit of glue popping out there. I'm just going to pull that off with the, always been heavy-handed with glue and ink. There's me saying, you know, less is more, and then I end up putting too much on and it squeezing out. But the ink dries, the glue dries clear. So if you do get any sort of on the card, it will dry. And then I've got this tiny, this bit I've been, this twine's quite thick, so I wound it round something. And then the other one, to just stop it moving about, I've just slotted it under there, and you've got that little bit of detail on there. So yeah, nice little cluster of sewing elements on there just to go with the fabric, but it was the technique with the fabric that I wanted to concentrate on today. So let me just bring you that product back in for those of you that may not have seen it. As I say, a very old one. You may have it in your stash. The brand was Threaders by Crafter's Companion, which was their soft excuse me, their soft craft range, and they did lots of this when I very first started working for them, and then it kind of faded out. And it's a fabric stabilizer. So as I say, there's many of these out on the market. There's lots of different soft craft companies make them. It's basically like a starch, a very sort of mild starch that you use to stiffen fabric. So it says transform your fabric for easy cutting, and you can use it to die cut, obviously for soft crafts, it's perfect for applique and things like that. So yeah, I've had this a long time, and I was quite impressed that it was still okay actually when I got it out to use it. It's been popped away in storage for a while, and it worked absolutely fine. Like I said, I just popped the piece of fabric on some tissue, give it a good liberal squirt of a coating of the spray, left it to dry for as long as I could, and then just finished it off with my heat tool, and all of a sudden that fabric becomes much more paper-like. So again, the only thing I added to this one was some pearls. You know me, any of you that watch me regularly know that they're not finished without the gems or the pearls on there. So I've got 3 just to highlight that corner to offset the buttons here. Just felt it needed something over there for the composition of the card. And then I've scattered 3 across here. So yes, we've got an even number, but they are in 2 clusters of 3, so it ticks a box. So just dotted some between the little cluster to just join these 3 sections together, bringing your eye through here into there. And then finally, just inside, as I say, I've kept it nice and simple. So it says sent with love on your special day, with the little row of stitching inside. So that was my card for today, focusing on using that fabric. So if you do have any fabric lying around and you can get hold of the spray starch, how about bringing it into your card? You know, I might do some more along this line. I might do some of the fabric and actually die cut it so that we can use it as embellishments, possibly even create kind of the applique style, sort of making maybe quilt design on the front of a card, something like that. But don't forget that if you don't have the fabric, you could recreate this technique with the plain in the background, well, the flat fabric in the background and the pleated part here. You can see, if I just bring this back in again, you can see we've got this pleating going down the edge of the card here. Yeah, just as an extra look. So you could recreate that with paper. So I hope you've enjoyed that one today. If you've liked the content, I'd love it if you could give it a thumbs up for me. If you're new to the channel, it's great to have you on board. If you like the content, you can click that subscribe button, click the notification bell. I upload twice a week on a regular basis. So it's normally Tuesdays and Saturdays. Occasionally there's an extra one in there. But mainly Tuesdays, Saturdays every week. And Tuesday tends to be a little bit more straightforward. The Saturday ones tend to be a bit more in depth. So yeah, it's loved having you here today. Enjoy whatever you've got planned for the rest of your day, and I'll see you here very soon. Bye bye now.